Are you held back by an oppressive feeling you can't do something? Maybe a negative voice inside your head, or just an oppressive sense that you can't achieve what you want to achieve or lead the life that you want to lead? If so, you're being held back by the inner critic. In this video, we're going to find out what the inner critic is and how to reduce the inner critic and have a better and happier life. The inner critic is very popular these days. You've probably heard about it. It's a term that's thrown around. Basically, it's the self-critical faculty inside your mind, a psychical structure inside your subconscious mind that actually has a role to play, which we'll have a look at in this video. But it tends to hold people back. It can hold you back in your first person voice, like I can't achieve something, or second person voice, you can't achieve. Or for some of you, you might have a very positive inner dialogue, but then the subconscious mind is still there saying you can't achieve something, okay? So you have a conscious mind and a subconscious mind. That person that's now watching the video is the conscious you, but you also have a subconscious you in the background, which has all these structures, these psychical structures, which you call subpersonalities. And the inner critic is one of these psychical structures, kind of a subpersonality or a series of subpersonalities, basically self-critical structures, okay? So we'll get into detail in the video. The key thing is to understand that there is a role that the inner critic has. So we're going to look at why you have an inner critic. We're going to look at the pros and cons of the inner critic. And most importantly, we're going to deconstruct the inner critic. You can't get rid of the inner critic because it's a structure developed in the first 8 years of your life, but you can reduce the inner critic and move on and have the life that you want to have once you handle it well. So we're going to go into a PPT, a little bit of technical detail because I want to give you an overview of the inner critic, all right? So let's jump in there. I would say it's very simply the case that whatever you feel that you cannot do something, it's not for me, I couldn't do it, people like me can't have a romantic partner like that, people like me, you know, we can't get that kind of a job, we can't be that kind of success, we can't win that medal, etc. That's always the inner critic. So let's just jump right in and have a look at what's basically causing this problem with the inner critic. So in this PPT presentation, we're going to look at what causes the inner critic, the pros and cons of the inner critic, and what you can do to get a grip on it. Because basically the inner critic is affecting every single person on the planet to some degree or other, although some people have better control of it. So we start off with understanding the subconscious mind. We see here in the diagram that it has that the subconscious mind in this particular diagram is something like 99%. We don't know. We don't know to what degree we're conscious or subconscious, but basically the conscious mind is you. You sitting here listening to this right now, that's your conscious mind. The conscious self, the aware self, your identity, you're watching this, you're aware of this, okay? The subconscious mind is that which does all the things like it keeps your body breathing, it keeps your heartbeat going, it drives you to work in the morning or to school or college. You know, the first time you go to some new location, you have to think about it. After a few times, you don't have to think about it. So your subconscious mind does it. So your subconscious mind does all this maintenance stuff. So really, like, the subconscious mind is kind of like a servant in a way, all right? But the interesting thing about the subconscious mind is it doesn't have a personality as such, although there are many what we could call subpersonalities which reside in the subconscious mind, all right? So the subconscious mind is kind of like a servant, or kind of like these mechanical devices you have in, say, your car, for example. You know, your car these days, it has auto cruise, it has like air conditioning, etc. It will set the temperature to a certain degree, it will drive the car in a certain way. Even now self-drive cars are coming out, and it will do certain things a certain way. And it seems almost clever. When we look at some technology today, it's almost uncanny how effective they are. But they never have a conscious mind behind them. And that's the very thing with the subconscious. It doesn't have a conscious. It doesn't have an intellect that thinks, this is what I'm looking at, and this is what I'm thinking. It doesn't. It just obeys your commands. This is actually what it does. It obeys your commands. But it sees the world in a very funny way. and it has no perspective on the world. It just accepts whatever you throw at it, and so it's very easily conditioned. So we have here this little picture here that the young child accepts everything that's thrown at it pretty much. Up to 8 years of age, you are accepting whatever internal input. So whereas the person from about 8 years of age onwards has a thing called discernment. And if you look at this other slide here, we'll kind of see the graph showing that initially the subconscious mind is doing everything, but then after a period of time, over a period of time, the conscious mind develops. So when you're a little baby, you're basically 100% subconscious, and bit by bit your personality starts kicking in. But even like a 3 or 4 year old child, you say to a 3 or 4 year old child, or even a 5-year-old child, you say, you're bad, and the child will just think I'm bad. Whereas if you say the same thing to the 8 or 9-year-old child, he'll or she will think about it, am I bad? And then they'll probably go to the mommy or daddy and say, this person says I'm bad, am I bad? So this is discernment that's coming in. And so some kids could start having discernment at 6 years of age, some will be 8 or 9 or 10 years of age, but the rule of thumb is around 7 or 8 years of age, the personality seems to be fully developed, the basic person that you are, the way you think about things. So what's really happening is in early life we just accept everything. That's why we see young kids, they just copy their parents and the people around them, and they're just like blotting paper. They just absorb whatever is happening around them. And it's good and bad, because the child will basically become like the people around it, for better or for worse. And we all see that in our families all the time. Now, the thing about the development of the inner critic is the inner critic has a good side and a bad side. The good side of the inner critic is a thing called the conscience. The bad side is, of course, the inner critic. How is the conscience developed? Well, basically when you're a small kid and you go to grab the saucepan, you're about to throw boiling water or boiling milk or something over yourself, your mom or your dad, your brother, your sister, or somebody else shouts, he says, don't do that. And you learn not to do certain things. But because you're so young and the person shouting at you is older and authoritative compared to you, you take it as a judgment that you can't do this and you shouldn't do that. We see that often with young kids. They seem to have a lot of rules and regulations in the way they do things because that's what they've learned. Now, what's happening is that the child is simply taking on board whatever that person said. Now, when the child, say for example, robs a pen from another kid or a tie, and the adult says, oh, why do you took the other child's tie, you have to give it back, it's not yours. Don't be bold. How would you feel if that happened to you? And the child then feels guilty and bad and gives it back. But also the child starts developing a conscience. The next time he or she feels like robbing a pen or a tie, the child will think, oh, should I rob that pen or tie? How would I feel if that happened to me? And so these little instructions from our elders, from the teachers, from our siblings, from the people around us, parents, etc., over time develop this thing called a conscience. We try and teach the kid what's right and what's wrong. And this is good. We develop a conscience. But we also have these other situations, like, for example, say the saucepan, or maybe you go into class, you're a very young kid and you're jumping around the place like a little monkey, and the teacher says, sit down, and she gets angry at you. Well, again, you take it as a judgment. I have to sit down. And another thing that happens if you're a parent is you go into parenting, you think I'll be a great parent, a perfect parent, and then your kid keeps irritating and you shout at your kid and you say something like your kid, like, oh, you're stupid and you're dumb. And you shouldn't say these things, but most parents at some stage or other will say these things. Even the most enlightened parents say these things. And every time somebody says that, the kid feels that they're not so worthy. Another thing that happens is you're in class and maybe you're not good at a subject and everybody else gets a high mark and you get a low mark. And even though nobody said it to you, it again has this sense of criticism. Oh my God, I'm no good. Everybody else is better at this than me. I suck at this subject, okay? It's very, very common. So sometimes when we get criticism as a young person, it develops a conscience. Sometimes the criticism from the person is genuine, they want to criticize us. Sometimes people have criticism and judgment because they themselves have a strong inner critic and they're projecting their inner critic. They're a very critical person. They give out to us for nothing. Oh, you're useless, you're stupid. Oh, I never met somebody stupid as you. A lot of people have this inner dialogue themselves. It's kind of like a disease, a mental disease that we're spreading around society of criticism, because when we keep criticizing other people, especially young kids, they internalize this critic and it becomes part of the inner critic. So also sometimes, like say in the water boiling situation, or the teacher asks you to sit down, it's not that they really are judgmental, but you just judge it because they seem so big and strong and authoritative compared to the little you, okay? So your conscience is arbitrarily created through an early life experience. The problem that we see here with the inner critic is that it actually develops into a subpersonality. And this is a very common process we have in the subconscious mind. So the subconscious mind itself does not have a personality. It's like a kind of mechanistic kind of machine, basically. But subpersonalities reside there, okay? There's a process called introjection, whereby, say, for example, say one of your parents is always angry. They're angry, they're angry, they're angry, they're angry, they're angry. And for a long time, it's external. And then somewhere along the way, you have a little voice in your head saying, you can hear them in your head. And then eventually, you start getting angry as well. You end up just being like them. You also end up being angry. So what's actually happened is you've introjected their anger, that part of them that's angry, and you become like them. Just like you could have a parent who's very empathetic. You know, initially it's just outside you, but then after a while you too become like an empathetic kind of person who feels for other people. So initially we absorb things like outer criticism, and after a while we internalize it, okay? So it's like, even on a very simple level, we say bullying in school. Initially a bully might bully you in school and you might think it is external, but if it goes on long enough, you'll probably start agreeing with the bully, and you'll feel that towards yourself, that you are foolish and stupid and all this sort of stuff, okay? So the inner critic is criticism that has been internalized into a personality, and it can literally dominate you like this little voice in your head, or like multiple voices in your head saying how bad you are. And again, they could be in the first person, the second person, or it could just be a sense of restriction. So can we get rid of the inner critic? And the answer is no, because just like you can't get rid of your conscience, once a subpersonality is created in your mind, you can't really get rid of that subpersonality. But what you can do is you can reduce the inner critic, because everybody has a certain amount of self-criticism, and sometimes it's useful, like the conscience or just reality checking. A certain amount of conscientiousness can be good, or just the awareness of, damn, I suck, maybe I should change. I mean, that's a good side of an inner critic, but it's just that the volume's too much. If the volume's too much, then it's overriding everything, and it's holding us back and stopping us from living our best life, okay? So what can we do? Well, there's kind of a three-step process here, okay? So what we can actually do with the inner critic is, number one, we have to reduce those critical thoughts. Number two, we have to build ourselves up to positive suggestion. And number three, we have to visualize the kind of life that we want to lead. So first of all, how do we reduce critical thoughts, okay? So the basic thing is that you have certain things going on. Sometimes you have an objective criticism, and sometimes you have a criticism which is totally subjective. So what do I mean by that? Okay. An example of a genuine objective criticism would be, I can't hold on to a romantic partner, I must be unlovable. Now, if we remove the judgment is, I can't hold on to a romantic partner. The unlovable bit is a judgment. If we then change that to, I'm working on loving myself more and more every day, then you're stating the solution. So the approach to reducing this negative critical thinking is to take something, a negative thought that you have, a critical thought that you have, state the critical thought, then restate the statement, but remove the judgment, and then state the solution, okay? So you're going to state the critical thought, including the judgment, then you're going to remove the judgment, and then you're going to state the solution. Now you might think this is silly, but the thing is, human beings live in language. The thing that makes the difference between, say, us and apes, for example, is that apes don't have a language. So without a language, you can't have ideas or structured ideas. Say, you can have ideas, sure, yeah, I want to eat, you see a picture of a banana in your head, you want to eat a banana, but a structured idea, like I'm going to go down to the shop, I'm going to go and buy a banana, I'm going to buy some ice cream, I'm going to have banana and ice cream, I'm going to have a great time here. All of that thinking requires language to some degree. So our language is creating a reality, and language with judgment tends to hold us back. So literally, you've got to, like weeding a garden, look at different thoughts that you have and take each judgment out and make a conscious effort to remove the judgment. And then what we call a positive suggestion or auto-suggestion is create a phrase that replaces it. So what happens is, say for example, you're having romantic problems and you keep on having this unlucky love thing. Every time this thought comes, I'm unlovable, you just say, no, I'm working on loving myself more and more every day. Now, if you look at this one, for example, the person feels that they're unlovable because they're a non-success romantically. And yes, they are non-success romantically. But then they're saying, I'm working on loving myself more and more every day. Okay? So what they're actually doing is that they are trying to get over those feelings of unlovability that are holding them back. Okay? We could take an example of, say, a subject like maths. I suck at maths, and the judgment would be, I'm useless. Well, no, it's I just suck at maths. Get rid of the I'm useless bit. And then the solution will be, well, I'm working on getting good at maths every day. So next time the person does a maths problem and they suck, instead of saying I'm a loser, I'm sucking at maths, I'm useless, it'll be, no, I'm studying maths. I get this damn book out and I'm going to study it again. Okay? So you have to work out your own way of doing it, but the basic gist is take the statement with a judgment, remove the judgment, and then state the solution. And you can change, you can mold it over time to make it work better for you. Okay? The second type is more insidious, and this is self-critical judgment with a which doesn't have an objective. It's a subjective. So what I mean by that is there's no objective anything. So for example, if you're failing in love all the time, you could say, yeah, I'm not a success with holding romantic relationships. Or if you're failing in your maths all the time, you say, yeah, I'm not a success at maths. But what if you just think, I just suck? You don't know why. Everything's good. You're doing well in school, in college, and your job, and your romantic life. Everything is a success, but you feel, you're a bit of a loser, you're a failure, you're not hitting your full potential, or you know, sooner or later people are going to find you out, or you just basically don't feel lovable. Or let's say pretty. Let's say, for example, you're a boy or a girl, and you're doing well. Everybody says you're good looking and you have no problem attracting people sexually and so on. But you look in the mirror and you think, look awful. So this is totally subjective. Everybody is telling you look good. You might even be a model. Everybody is telling you look good, but you think you look awful. That's a great example, okay? So let's look at this example. I'm a bad person, I'm a loser. So what we do is we remove the judgment. I accept that right now that I feel I'm a bad person, a loser, but I know that this is not true. It's just a self-judgment. So, see, you might feel that you're a loser. I can't say, I could try and give a pep talk. This is where we make a mistake in life, is we try and cheer people up, and it never works. Because we say, well, I feel I'm a loser, and I go and say, oh, you're not a loser, you're a great person. But you won't believe me, you see, because I said it. You only believe what you say. People only say only believe what they say, okay? There's no adage in sales, for example, and that adage in sales is, if I say it, it's not true, but if you say it, it is true. And what that means is a good salesperson kind of sets up questions about the thing they're trying to sell and tries to get the prospect to agree with them. And then the prospect is making up their mind that they like the product. So it's not the salesman pitching. It's a mistake a lot of salespeople make. They keep pitching all the time. It's the the prospects that, my God, this is the best thing ever. So you're trying to another quote from sales, let the prospect lead you to where you want them to go, which is basically, make them feel like they're making a decision. So again, if you know somebody who's very negative, for example, or they think they're very bad, negative view of themselves, you can't just pep them up. So what we do is, rather than fighting this thought, because you can't get over this negative thought, how are you going to get over the negative thought is you have to prove it over time. So initially you agree, I agree that I'm a loser, or I agree that I'm unlovable, or I agree that I'm really not good looking at all, I'm ugly looking. I agree that I feel that I'm ugly looking, for example. I feel that I'm a loser. So I'm accepting, I'm not trying to fight the thought, I'm accepting it. But then you add in, because language is powerful, you see, what we say to ourselves is great power. So then you say, but I know this is not really true, it's just a self-judgment. And the solution is, I'm working at learning to accept myself a little bit more every day. So the solution to that is, I'm working on acceptance. It's like the previous one, a person thought that they were unlovable. I'm working on loving myself, because the negative thought was, I'm unlovable. The negative thought here is, I'm a loser. I'm learning to accept myself, because the only way I'm going to stop feeling like I'm a loser is by accepting myself as I am. So this is the first key aspect, is working on these critical thoughts. You basically have to weed weed your way through these thoughts. Okay, so this is the first thing for working on a critic. This is not an overnight process. This will take you a few months, could take you a year or two, depending how much negative thoughts you have. You have to work on it. Okay, another very important thing, the second thing here, is we're getting into positive suggestion, and we have here practicing abundance. Okay, we have to replace this negative thinking with a more abundant thinking. All right, I do remember a book I read many years ago, and I found it very useful, called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. It's very good. It talks about fear and overcoming fear, and another aspect she talks a lot about is victim consciousness. And you know, there's you see it in society. There's people who are going around thinking they're a victim all the time, and there's people who are empowered and who are going around thinking that I'm basically creating my life and I take responsibility for whatever happens, and I don't just blame everybody else. Now, of course, you could be a genuine victim. You could be a victim of a road accident. You could be a victim of abuse or an attack or something. And sure, in that way, yeah, we can be a victim, but you're only a victim temporarily in time, for a short period of time. Something bad happened to you. But the problem with victim consciousness isn't that people feel a victim for, you know, an hour or a day or a week or something. They feel victim for all their life. And a lot of people play victim politics and try and make people feel disempowered all the time, and they blame everybody, and they spend their entire life feeling like a victim and going around the place feeling victimized and so on and so forth. This is very disempowering. So we have to empower ourselves. So the thing is, yes, you could have been a victim of a certain bad event, but you are not a victim as a person. Okay, you are a powerful human being, and so what we have to do is build ourselves up. And one way of building ourselves up, I'm going to talk about mind feed in a second, but first I'm going to talk about the power of positive suggestion. Okay, so positive suggestion, a guy called Emily Coué, C-O-U, I think, or C-O-U-E, I think in the 19th century came with this idea. It's become very popular. The idea is you're using positive thinking, and you use positive phrases about who you are and how you are and so on. And it can be taken too much. For example, there was a famous book called The Power of Positive Thinking. A lot of people did this and found it wasn't so effective. Then we got the law of attraction. You might have heard that movie came out, I think 2006, and all the books and all came out. And the reason why the law of attraction did well was talk more about feeling rather than thinking. And the problem with positive thinking on its own is not enough, because you've got a thing called the paradigm. Your worldview also has to change, and so how you visualize things and you feel about things are also terribly important. But that doesn't mean that suggestion isn't important, especially since your mind is linguistic. So there are a few rules about creating positive suggestion. So you identify what you want to change. You create a positive statement, has to be believable, aspirational, in the present tense, always positive. Use strong emotion and visual images. Now this is terribly important. It gets more into law of attraction stuff, using strong emotion and visual images. All right. So let's give some examples here. So for example, I will be a more loving person in the future. Well, no, because it has to be in the present. Your subconscious mind won't really understand something in the future. So you always try and make it in the present, although you could talk about the present and moving on to the future. So I'm becoming a more lovable person day by day. I won't be a failure anymore. Never use negative language. So the first problem was in the future. The second problem there is failure. No, I am a success. Because you can't imagine your subconscious mind is a bit like the dog. You know, you take your dog out. You can't give a big long explanation to your dog. Just keep it simple, okay? So it's like that. It's not very highbrow thinking. If you say words like failure all the time, it'll just think, oh yeah, he wants to be a failure. Okay, I'll make him a failure. All right. So I am a success. I'm becoming more successful each passing day. The next we got example, I will pass the summer exams and graduate. Again, the summer, your subconscious mind doesn't know what the summer is. It doesn't have your perspective at all. No, you say, I am a successful student and I will graduate with flying colors. You try and bring it back as much as you can into the present. You could say, I'm a successful student and in the summer I will graduate. You could do that if you like. So I like this picture here, how the subconscious mind sees reality. It's very good. The big challenge we have with the subconscious mind is that we're so rational in this era. We think in rationality, but previous eras were not as rational, okay? So the thing with the rational mind is we're process driven, we're organized, and the subconscious mind is very intuitive. It's very associative with just different things. You throw an image of a carpet, next thing it sees a flying horse. That's your subconscious mind that comes up with all this stuff. That's the way your subconscious, same thing, if you're dreaming and all sorts of weird stuff happens in dreams. So we have this picture here, we got a ship, we got a chess piece, we got what looks maybe like a kind of glass horse or something. another chess piece here, trumpet. Is it a rocket or a blimp? Maybe a rocket or something. And then this guy has eyes and everything, weird graphics and stuff. I mean, it's pretty wild, okay? It's like on drugs. Actually, on drugs, why do people have trippy experiences? If you ever take a lot of drugs and have a trip, that's basically your subconscious mind. It's a pretty wild place, subconscious mind. So your subconscious mind is basically your servant, and it does what you tell it. But it goes by the language you're using, the continual phrases you're talking about yourself, because it kind of hears these commands, and it doesn't really know, because the subconscious mind doesn't have to get up in the morning, doesn't have to go to work, it doesn't have to deal with, doesn't have to pay taxes or any of this sort of thing. The subconscious mind just is a servant that is there to give you what you want. And if you keep on saying things like failure, bad person, etc., it thinks you want to be a failure and be a bad person because it doesn't feel the repercussions, because it's not conscious. It's just like a machine. It gives you what you want. So you have to use positive language. You also have to use positive, like visual images and strong feelings. So an example would be like, say, school bully. The kid is going to school and they're thinking about the bully. They keep having this negative language, the image of the bully, and the feelings of terror. Well, the subconscious mind will just think, okay, language about the bully, it's got the image of a bully, it's got strong feelings. Okay, I'll make sure that you're going to meet the bully. Okay? So if you're ever having a problem with a person, the best thing to do is almost forget them. Try not to think about them. Don't talk about them, don't visualize them, don't have any feelings about them. Let them go. Otherwise, your subconscious mind will actually try and make sure you keep in contact with that person. So getting back to dealing with the inner critic and using positive suggestion is the subconscious mind needs stuff in the now. So you want to go and have, for example, I'm doing really well in my studies. I'm going to graduate in the summer, for example, and you throw images of yourself being a success, and you see yourself in each subject doing really well, writing the exam, going up for graduation, receiving your graduation certificate and all this stuff, and having strong positive feelings. So you just need to put strong positive feelings and throw that as subconscious as throw strong negative feelings. So you got to be very careful, okay? It's like if you hop into the back of a taxi, you can't just say, you have to give an instruction to the taxi driver where you want to go. We've probably all had the situation, we hopped into the taxi and we said something rapidly and the taxi driver brings us around the location, we end up having an argument. Taxi driver, he says, well, you told me to go here. And you think, I told you to go there. But it doesn't matter, he brought you here now. This is exactly the way it is with the subconscious mind. You got to be careful what you're telling it, and you talk through it through repetitive phrases, visual images, and strong feelings. The last thing I want to touch here is the power of vision. And this is about taking all this stuff about positive thinking, so you're weeding out the negative thoughts, you're using positive thinking, and then using the power of vision to visualize the life you want. Because you're basically, the way it works in life is you're reprogramming yourself every minute of the day. You're putting thoughts into your mind every moment of the day. Your subconscious mind is being trained all the time, okay? We should try and visualize the life you want. The image I have here of a lady meditating on a mountain, it's both aspirational, it's also something very practical, like things like meditation can be very useful. Also, you could try things like take time out of your day to do visualization exercises. Visualizing can be very useful, okay? The thing is, it's not just, you can have, say, visualization sessions every day or most days, for example, but also just in general, get into visualizing what life you want, because there's kind of two possibilities with your life and where your life is going. You can be led or you can lead. And what I mean by being led, something always amazes me every time I go to a bank is I see these endless ads, and they always seem to have, generic mom, generic dad, generic two kids, and maybe they throw generic grandparents in. And the mom and dad are always 30 something, and the kids are always about 10 or 11, and the grandparents are always about 60ish. Like, there's no like really old grandparent who's like 80 and frail, or teenage kids who are irritating, or mom or dad are 55 and have got a big gut hanging out of them or something. No. Everybody's beautiful and happy and smiling looking as they take that mortgage out, as you take that car loan out, okay? So we're being advertised to all the time. There's ads all over the goddamn place, and they're trying to make us consume. I'm not saying don't consume, but you should have the choice over what you want to consume, rather than consuming because somebody's telling you to consume. Okay, so if you are not deciding where you want to go with your life, somebody else is, and that other person is telling you to buy a car, and buy a house and take out a student loan and go on a holiday and buy all sorts of accessories and get loans and blah, 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 blah. And, for a start, you might be able to get all these loans, and then you get frustrated because you can't get them. And you might be able to pay them back even if you can't get them. And then you might also even find that when you get all these things, you don't even like them. So the thing is to, spend time out finding out what you want, where you want to go with your life, all right? And in other videos I make on this channel, I talk a lot about working on yourself and finding out about who you are and so on. And it's worth the effort to find out about yourself and work on yourself and find out what you want. And another very important thing here is, when I mean life vision, it's not necessarily about becoming a super success, because everybody just talks about making loads of money or being famous or something. There's lots of people who just want to have a life, just their own little life. They just want to have a hobby or meaningful relationships. Maybe they want to get married and have kids. Maybe they want to go surfing every day. When I say the power of vision and a life vision, it's what's the vision for you. Not necessarily that you're rich or famous or anything like that, okay? So just try and find out what you want, because everybody has goals and aspirations, and the inner critic is holding you back. But part of getting out of that, it's not just that we have to reduce the inner critic, we have to, over a period of time, remove the inner critic with a focus on what do we want and where do we want to go. And after a while, the person that we want to be becomes more powerful than the negative thoughts or inner criticisms, okay, over a period of time, all right? So we should be using that inner vision to, push us towards the life that we want and lead us away from the life that we don't want, all right? Also, we can look at mind feed in this. Mind feed is basically, giving yourself, we see a lot of ads these days and nutritional supplements and so on. Giving yourself sustenance, but you also have to give your mind sustenance. You have to read good books and watch good TV shows and stuff. I used to watch a lot of TV when I was young. These days I watch very little, because I feel personally that a lot of drama shows become too negative. And, I'm not saying don't watch drama shows, but, try and give yourself a lot of positivity in your life, things which make you feel good. A lot of people are too attracted or addicted to the endless drama and excitement and everything's up in the air and so on, okay? Try and give yourself nice experiences. Go for a walk, go to a nice scenic location, go for a little trip now and again, give yourself some fun experiences that boost you. Moving away from the inner critic is as much about feeling good as in trying to get away, because as long as you're trying to get away from something, you can never get away from it. So to some degree, what I've talked about in this video is things to get away from the inner critic, which is like weeding out the thoughts and all that sort of stuff. But it's also, and positive suggestion, but it's also building yourself up and creating something that just moves you away. Because when you fight something, whatever you fight becomes stronger. So we don't want to fight the inner critic. We want to move aspirationally towards a better life, okay? And there's infinite possibilities. Nice picture here, the universe suggests, but the reality is there's so many possibilities that we don't realize. And I think one of the big challenges in life is that we are restricted to the dialogue inside our head, and we have to be willing to let go of that negative dialogue and realize there's way more possibilities. And I remember some years ago I had a conversation with a Roman Catholic priest, very good conversation, where he told me that you don't know what gifts are lying in wait for you, that as you go through life and get older, different gifts will come. And at the time I thought it was inspirational, and later on I think it's even more inspirational, because the fact is, no matter how tough your life is now today, if you keep hanging in there and keep working through things, new possibilities will come over the next few years, next few decades perhaps. New relationships, new skills you never thought that you had, new abilities, new interests, so many possibilities for you that you're just not aware of now. And to just open ourselves up to, wow, what is possible? And again, back to mind feed is reading, good books or watching good videos, and maybe learning about a new hobby or learning new subjects, and we can move forward with that, okay? And this idea as well, like the Tibetan Buddhists, they talk about the bringing the mind back home, and their idea is that the mind is just the blue sky and the thoughts are like the clouds. So once we go above the clouds, we go above the thoughts, we're back to this eternal blue sky, and the idea of bringing ourselves to a higher state of being. Once we get over or move above the restrictions of those lower thoughts and so on and so forth. Okay, so again, just to sum up the video today about how do you handle your inner critic. How you handle your inner critic is by, number one, reducing those judgments, and you have to just keep weeding, and it's a kind of lifetime process of every time we say something like, oh, I'm stupid, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Well, you shouldn't have done that, but you're stupid. Okay, like if you left your keys in the car and you can't get in the car, or you locked yourself out of the house, or you pulled out your car and you scratched your car off the walls. Oh, I'm stupid. No, you're not stupid. You're not a stupid person. No, what you say was, I made a tactical error with driving my car. Okay, you're not stupid. So keep weeding out the stupid thoughts, the judgmental thoughts, and using positive suggestion. Initially, people need to do a lot of suggestion. Over time, that starts to become, you don't have to do so much positive suggestion because it just becomes part of your life. And then work on creating a vision for where you want to go and using mind feed and directing a more positive life. So it's an overall process that we have to move ourselves into a more positive direction in life. Every human being has an inner critic. Everybody has critical thoughts. Sometimes the inner critic is useful to a degree, but we have to put the inner critic back in its box. That's it in a nutshell. Okay, inner critic has its place because we need a little bit of self-criticism to keep us humble and to keep a perspective, but we need to put it back in its place. So there is a second video on this. I'm basically, I have another one which is basically talking about the inner critic and depression. If you're depressed or know anybody who's depressed, maybe check that video, because I really believe that the oppressive side of depression is actually inner critic. So I hope this helps. There's a lot in it. You might want to revisit parts of the video again. But in a way, it's that simple. And on the other side, it's that hard, and that'll take effort to improve your inner critic, but you can't put it back in its box. How long will it take? Anywhere from weeks to months. I mean, to fully depower the inner critic, for some people could take years, for other people could take a week or two. Depends upon how your mind is set up. But it's well worth doing so, because there was a book I remember. I can't remember who wrote the book. Somebody famous, some psychotherapist, I think. Maybe it was Carl Rogers. Might have been Carl Rogers. I think it's Carl Rogers. It was, you cannot afford a negative thought. I think it was something like that. I'll think of it later. You cannot afford. Google it. I think it's you cannot afford a negative thought. But basically, yes, we cannot afford to be negative. Negative things can happen to us. We have to deal with negative situations, but we cannot afford to be negative. So hope that helps, and please like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you next time.